I want to start by introducing myself. My name is Cheryl Lovato-Niles. I'm with WSU Extension in Whatcom County. I am the Water Resources Educator, and I am a proud partner to the Whatcom Watersheds Information Network, which we call WWIN for short. WWIN is a coalition, and our mission is to protect and restore our local waters and watersheds through information exchange, collaboration, education, and public engagement. And we are delighted to be hosting tonight's Speaker Series event. So this evening, we're going to learn a lot about the present and future of seaweed mariculture in Whatcom County. And this is something that has been of interest to our WWIN team for quite a while, but these presenters are super busy folks, and so it has taken a little bit of time to actually make this all come together, and I'm very happy that it has. Very grateful to the presenters for sharing their time with us. So in preparation for this, I've done a little bit of reading, trying to educate myself a little bit about seaweed mariculture. And I've learned that it is used as not only a food, which I knew, but also fertilizer and animal feed and beauty products, and even as packaging replacements replacements for packaging material. And so I would invite you to share what is the most recent way that you have used a seaweed product, and you can put that into the chat. You'll find the chat if you hover your mouse at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You will find an icon there that says chat, and if you click on that, you can type in the most recent way that you used seaweed, which should be interesting. I can share that the most recent way that I used seaweed was as a kelp sprinkle that I added to a dip that I had for veggies and dip. And so there will be time for questions after each presentation, and you can ask your questions in a couple of different ways. You can raise your hand and ask your question verbally, and in order to do that, you would again just hover your mouse at the bottom of the screen, and you can click on that raise hand icon, and at which point I'll see that your hand is raised, and I can invite you to ask your question in person, or you can use that same chat function to type your question in. And there's no need to wait until the very end of the presentation to put your question into the chat. You can go ahead, and if you have a question come up during the presentation, you can go ahead and put that in the chat at that time. Riley, if you want to go ahead and share your screen, now would be a good time to do that. I see some answers coming through. I see seaweed puffs, soaking your feet in warm water and kelp. Wow, that's neat. Someone had a pesto sea veggie burger, and a seaweed spread almost like pesto. Ramen and Lummi Island kelp dashi stock and kelp chili flakes. Wow, very cool, very cool. So I'll also put a plug in. I always find it more pleasant to see people's faces when I present remotely. So if you're comfortable leaving your camera on, that could be a nice thing for our presenters. But of course, if you're eating your dinner right now and you'd like a little privacy, then we will certainly respect that. And now I would like to introduce Riley. Riley Starks has been a Whatcom County resident since 1970 and graduated from WWU in 1972. He bought his first commercial fishing boat in 1973 and has fished commercially all of his life. He moved to Lummi Island in '92 when he started reef net fishing. He currently has a bed and breakfast called Nettles Farm, a nonprofit called the Salish Center for Sustainable Fishing Methods, and is a partner in a 2-year-old seaweed farm called Lummi Island SeaGreens. Thank you so much, Riley, and I'll turn the floor over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm a little bit technically handicapped, so I might make some mistakes, but like trying to get to the next slide would help. Oh, there it is. Okay. So why seaweed and why sugar kelp? As Cheryl was saying, seaweeds have been a staple of world diets in much of the world, but the U.S. has been slow to the party. And we've just begun growing seaweed in the Northeast in the last 5 or 10 years. In Alaska, maybe 5 years ago, and here, 2 years. We have the first seaweed farm in the state of Washington. But the thing is, seaweed cultivation does not require land, doesn't require irrigation, amendments, fertilizer, pesticides, or even very much labor. And yet here in Whatcom County, it yields tons of beautiful food containing many trace minerals difficult to obtain elsewhere. Sugar kelp is recognized around the world as a good tasting and nutritional seaweed crop. It grows wild locally, and that's required by the DNR to even have a farm here. A lot of places allow for wild harvest of seaweed, but we don't believe it's sustainable in the state of Washington, and so it's not allowed. How is it done? So the farm is set on lines that are anchored to the seafloor. We fish in about 50 feet to 35 feet deep, but the actual lines are suspended in the water 7 feet down. So they're seeded. And it's a very simple seeding system. These are seed tubes that Leah has done. For us, she'll tell you all about the seeding, which is amazing. And so we take those, and we have property that my nonprofit has property right on Legoe Bay. And so we have this portable dock, sort of, that we push out into the water, loaded with anchors and buoys and lines, and we just tie up to it, and we pick a nice day. This is December 1st, which just happened to be beautiful, and that's when we started to lay the farm out. And the thing is about seaweed is that you don't, let's see if I can get up there a ways. Oh boy. You don't have to go out if it's rough. You know, with regular fishing, you got to go out when they say you can fish. But with seaweed, you just pick good days, and so it's really fun. And it's wintertime fishing, which is even more fun. And so on this slide, you can see the tubes that you saw in the previous slide being mounted on launchers, and the line that's on the stern of the boat is running through that core. And as it goes out, it just turns, it rotates. And you can see there's backing up. You can see the corks behind them. It depending upon what direction, it's like the rows of a farm, land farm, where if you look at it one way, it looks like, just haphazard. But if you line everything up, you can actually see that there's a method to it. So we're laying out there again the farm. And we're using these spreader bars to keep the lines all 10 feet apart, and they're just made out of ABS plastic. The thing is, with farming on land or sea, there's always problems. 2 weeks after we set the farm out, giant islands of bull kelp drifted in, and they drifted right over the farm. And these little holdfasts you see, they're not little, these big holdfasts you see of the edge of the boat, those things drop down, they're weighted, and they just grab onto the seed line and they just destroy it. We lost more than half of our seed line in the first 2 weeks of setting it out. So that was December 1st. This is early February, so December, January, so 2 months. You can see how much it's grown. It was those little spots before, but now it's it's a couple feet long. And so we work with Greenwave, which is an East Coast nonprofit, which is encouraging people to farm. And they ask us to cut off, to strip a foot of seaweed periodically every few weeks. And then we measure it, we weigh it, and we do water temperature samples just to collect data for predicting what's going to happen in the future. So they're going to collect all this data, and then in turn they help us out. So there you can see a 1 foot sample there. But look how thick this is, the seaweed. It begins to recruit itself. The seed line is important, but as time goes on, it actually recruits itself. And these are little rock bags that we use for weights. And you can see that if you look at it closely, the little holdfasts, they grab onto the rocks inside that netting. So it's pretty cool. Let's see. So this is some of the data that we did. But in mid-February, we got 0.44 pounds per foot of yield. In 3 weeks later, we got 1.2 pounds per foot. And then only 11 days later, we got 2.79 pounds per foot. So you could see how quickly it grows as we get more sunlight. And I think we ended up with, we did about 16,000 pounds, which was about 3.5 pounds per foot of seed line. And so if we had all the seed line, you can see how thick it is here. So that's when we did our first harvest in the beginning of April. You can see it's just so thick and lush. And then we took it to a place in Concrete, Washington, that was an apple co-packer, and they have drying equipment. So we took it there, they washed it. You can see this is the wash water, which we actually bottled. And we just thought we'd try everything, and just see what works, what doesn't work. And we had it tested out beautifully. We tested it for shelf stability, and it was good at least for a month, refrigerated. And we served it up for tonic water for people who are having massages and doing hot tubs and saunas. So here's the drying facility. We just put it on racks, and he has a big big drying unit that's in like a container, a 40-foot container. And so he can do about 1,500 pounds a day. And this is us, we're learning. All of us are learning. They had never done kelp before either. And so they let us in there to learn how to do it. Oops, skip this one. This is a hammer mill. So after we had it all dry, we milled a lot of it into powder. And powder seems like it's one of the best ways to store this and to use it later. So here, after the first harvest, we did the final harvest, and you can see, it's like some of the fronds are, 20 feet long, literally 20 feet. And they're really fun. We brought a couple chefs out to help us and to introduce them to the kelp. This is one of them from 84 Yesler in Seattle. And they're using our kelp every week. It's on their menu. And so we'd fill up these totes and load them on this tender boat, the Chief Quina, which incidentally was the very first ferry, Lummi Island ferry. So it's had a long history here on Lummi Island. It was our reef net tender for probably 15 years. There's another chef there with the green coat. And we got Evening Magazine to come out, and so they filmed it, and they did a really nice, like 3 minute, uh, program about it. So we're doing bath and beauty products. This is our marketing team. They did one event down in LA a couple months ago. This is one of the products they came up with. See you later, alligator. Alligator skin apparently is a thing with women. Didn't know that. But if you soak your body really in the kelp, which we have in these little cotton bags, and you use it as kind of like a loofah, it is remarkable. And that's why I started soaking my feet in this every night, because it's like my feet are so soft and they feel good. So seaweed has a lot to offer. Digestive aid seasonings. We had a chef help us come up with some. And then 2 weeks ago, I went to Kodiak, Alaska. And this is Kodiak here for a workshop that Greenwave, the nonprofit, was putting on. They brought 18 farmers from all over the country, only one farmer representing each farm. And we were there for 5 days in a facility that NOAA has. It's an amazing facility for their fisher people. So we handled kelp. This might take a minute to come out. There we go. So again, we're getting there. So this was we were processing the kelp, cutting it up and getting it ready to dry. So then we visited a farm out there. There were 2 farms that were still, everybody had picked, but they left some of their product out for us so that we could watch their harvest method. And this is a harvest buddy, it's called, that they invented. I could only do these in like 6-second snippets to get them to work with email, but this is the harvest buddy starting. And then this is the harvest buddy going a little further. And it goes up and it gets cut by a little blade up there. And so it's completely hands off. Just drops down into that bag. And it's pretty revolutionary. They can do 30,000 pounds in a day of harvest. So that was awesome. I'm just going to go up here. So what does the future hold? And I think Cheryl covered a lot of this, but we see demand for seaweed in the U.S. growing a lot. Local food sourcing, number one. I mean, if you think about it, the local food movement is huge all over the country, and yet we get all of our seaweed from Korea and Japan. Cosmetic uses, sugar kelp is magical for your skin. I can prove that, and will prove it every chance I get when I go to farmers markets and stuff. Health and supplements, dried kelp powder helps reset the gut biome, gives trace minerals missing from most diets. Fertilizer, composted in kelp biochar, has endless benefits for land crop health, as well as animal feed additives that reduce methane in cattle and pigs. Kelp acts as a biostimulant to land crops, helping them to flower, fruit, and resist disease. This guy, this orchardist in Concrete that dried our product, he uses it twice a year and sprays it on, and it just works. And it's a substitute for plastics. This industry is just getting its legs, but you're already seeing kelp plastics in curd pods, food packaging, and even rain gear. This product will break down in the environment safely with none of the microplastics pollution that we see everywhere on Earth now. So it has a big future. We're at the very beginning stages of it. What I learned in Kodiak is those guys have been at it longer, but we're we're right up there with them. I mean, we are we're not behind. I'll put it that way. So I feel really good about what we've done. Any questions?
Wow, thank you so much. That's awesome. C Boyce, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, Riley. I'm Colleen. Thank you for your presentation. I am just at the very beginning stages of learning about mariculture, and I'm interested in seaweed. And I'm wondering, with this might be a little bit of a downer question, but I'm wondering, with all the microplastics that you mentioned in the environment, how how can we think about utilizing seaweed in all of its wonderful ways and yet not be worried about contamination from microplastics or other chemicals?
Well, there's a ton of work underway right now to be able to replace plastics, period, with kelp. And I was in Rhode Island 2 months ago to another kelp conference, and I met two gals who they're working on making a seed string. So the seed string that you saw in those coils, that's cotton. But it doesn't have to be cotton. It could be kelp that will break down, and that will save a lot of labor, for us as farmers. And I said, Keurig, those stupid coffee pods that exist everywhere, they don't have to be plastic. They're literally in Europe. They're seaweed right now.
That's cool. Any other questions for Riley? And while I give it a minute to see if other questions come in through the chat, I just
Looks like Jackie raised her hand, or did you, Jackie?
no, I think Colleen was applauding.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not good on the emojis.
Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
Okay, I couldn't figure out how to raise my hand. Hi. So I'm going to be doing the aquaculture program at BTC in the fall, and I've been just studying up on kelp farming, and I'm curious if they are going to be coordinating with you at all, if you know anything about that, if there's going to be any engagement. That's all.
And that's to me?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I did hear back from BTC. We're trying to recruit a booth for our ReefNet Festival that happens every August. And I had heard that there was a new program there. And so I brought that up because that'd be really fun to have a BTC booth there and to educate people about their program. It doesn't, I mean, we're in the baby steps stage of this thing, but we do need to educate workers, people, because I'm old. I do not intend on doing this, for the next few years. I'd like to have younger people step up, and we work with a tribal member, Kyle Kinley, who's young, and he has a young crewman, and they can do amazing work, but everybody else in our team is old.
Well, thank you. I want to go ahead and introduce Jackie next. I want to make sure we have time to hear from everybody. I noticed there are a couple of questions that came in via the chat, Riley, so perhaps either you could answer them by chatting back to everyone, or we can circle back to them at the end. But I want to go ahead now and welcome Jackie, introduce Jackie Dexter to be our next presenter. Jackie Dexter obtained her BS in biology from Western in 2007 and graduated from Bellingham Technical College in 2015. While employed by the Swinomish Indian Tribal Community's shellfish team, she was part of the Native Olympia oyster restoration team, developed 2 interpretive signs, and published in the Journal of Shellfish Research. Jackie took a few years off to be a homemaker, mother, and micro farmer to her husband and 2 young children, but then returned to her passion in aquaculture and began working for the Drayton Harbor Oyster Company in 2018. She has gone from managing the nursery of 1 to 2 million babies a year to managing the oyster farm. Jackie has always been ambitious, striving for novel ways to promote more food and economic security to the northern coastal communities. And for the last 5 years, she has been dreaming of creating a seaweed and shellfish farm that can feed people in the most sustainable way and provide the much needed ecosystem services our planet deserves. Jackie, I would invite you to go ahead and share your screen. I see your screen, Jackie.
Excellent. Do you guys see it? Let's go here. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here. There we go. There we go. That's what I want to see. Sorry if I'm a little laggy. I am bringing you this presentation from Lane Library because internet's awesome out in the county. And anyways, my name's Jackie Dexter, and I am the future seaweed farm and shellfish farm in Northern Whatcom County, Holdfast Mariculture. And I want to show you guys a little bit about what it's like to try and get a permit to grow seaweed in Washington State. This is the simplified version flowchart that NOAA issued last year. Riley knows exactly what I'm talking about, huh? And each one of these institutions, organizations, agencies has their own separate. So in total, I think it's like 9 or 10 permits altogether, because some of them have multiples within them, like Fish and Wildlife and Department of Health. And ultimately, Department of Natural Resources, they're the ones that manage the aquatic lands of Washington State. They would be issuing a lease and permit for the lease. But that was the end result. As you can see, it's quite a daunting process to some. There's great organizations like the Pacific Coast Shellfish Growers Association that have permit toolboxes and resources to help you along the process. And me personally, I have spent the last 2 years working on business license, obtaining a boat, rebuilding a boat, and working on social acceptance, working on my own survey work. Since I have an aquaculture and biological background, I've been able to do a lot of my own survey work. And later this month, my consultant will be performing some more survey work with a robot and divers. And once my assessment is finished, then I'm able to start submitting for permits, hopefully by the end of the month, but I keep saying that for the last year. So it's baby steps. It is a very long process and you have to be in it for the long. And I think, Riley, last time I saw you, you said 3 years?
Yes, 3 years.
Was about how long yours took?
Yep.
Yeah. So you got to be patient. And if the process is so daunting, why should we do it? And now I'm going to dive into the reasons why we should grow more seaweed, especially in Washington State. There are only 2 commercial farms in operation currently. I think 3 licenses total, because the one on Vashon Island won their appeals. And once we have more farmers growing, we're also going to need more processors. That's going to be another state. And as Riley has probably experienced, finding the right processors that will perform the job that we're looking for can be kind of tricky. And you got to overlap with maybe other fishing industries and or upland agriculture. a lot of our practices, as you spoke, mimic upland agriculture practices like grid lines and keeping things, in line. One of my business plans is I'm going to grow kelp, bull kelp, and blue mussels, all native species. And my goal is to grow commercially and also for restoration and habitat enhancement. I'd like to, if permitted through the permit process, am allowed, I'd like to leave some fallow, which is also mimicking upland agriculture practice, to promote more gametes and spores and seed in the water. Because the more of these organisms we have, the more ecosystem benefits that we can provide, which are much needed in a climate that we're in now. This is an infographic that I got from the Nature Conservancy depicting some of the ecosystem benefits that seaweed can provide. There is a slew of benefits. There was a research paper that came out just a couple of years ago out of Maine, and they found that seaweed farms can deflect wave energy up to 20%, which with rising oceans, climate change, and these crazy storms we get could be really extremely beneficial against erosion and rising oceans. This is just another infographic from the Nature Conservancy and showing how aquaculture practices can be restored. And that's what mariculture is different from aquaculture. Mariculture is growing seaweed and or shellfish in its natural habitat with restorative benefits, habitat enhancement. And as you can see, it's a process, and there's a lot of benefits. There's ocean acidification benefits that are localized, very hard to actually measure because water is fluid and moves. And so when tides go in and out, you can't really accurately measure nutrient loads and uploads as well as we'd like to, but there's work to be done. And then also, what's great about seaweed, especially, is that it draws up and consumes nitrogen and phosphorus. That's some of the basic elements that it grows on, much like upland agriculture. And luckily, we don't need to have any implants or input of those things because humans do that anyways with our runoff from our upland agriculture. So it'd be really awesome in the future that we have more seaweed farms located near these hotspots. And now I get to the other infographic where I want to let you all know that the best ways you can support mariculture, aquaculture, and seaweed farming in particular is spread the word to your friends and neighbors, the benefits of it, and join speaker series like these, get some books, visit some websites. I have a website, Riley might, Leah might, mariculture conferences exist all over. There's videos on YouTube, and spread the word, support it, and then write to your local policymakers and your state reps and support bills where that would allow for aquaculture and mariculture, and because these are sustainable, regenerative industries that need to be supported. And we're an emerging industry here in Washington, and we're going to need all the support we can get. We want to see more food and economic security, support resiliency in coastal communities, ecosystem benefits that are so many to list that I can't even go onto the list. Check out my website. And any questions?
Colleen has put a question in the chat, asking if there are volunteer opportunities. I'm not sure if that was directed to Riley or to Jackie. She says either.
Once I'm actually permitted, I would love to collaborate. I've done some work with the Bellingham Tech kids, with the MRC, the Whatcom Marine Resource Committee. They've done a lot of survey work with the Olympia oyster. Thank you guys. Appreciate all your help. And there's always going to be room for volunteer opportunities with any industry. You just, got to start asking and give us your contact info. Riley?
Yeah, we always welcome extra hands, not just on the water, but we have to strip the seed line. That's still yet to be done this year, and we have to clean all the buoys and get everything ready for next year. So I'm guessing it's already June, which I can't believe, but yeah, June, July, and then the rest of the and into fall. Plenty of opportunities.
I have a quick question, Jackie. So you said, I heard you say you were going to do bull kelp and blue mussels. And what is the third?
Sugar kelp,
Sugar kelp.
like what Riley's growing as well.
And what
Yes.
is the different, how do you use the bull kelp? I heard from Riley about different uses for the sugar kelp. What are some of the uses for bull kelp?
Well, I actually do recreational wild harvest, which you can do in the state with a recreational seaweed shellfish license. And I do bull kelp pickles, and I can't pickle and can enough for family and friends and events. And part of my business plan is to grow commercially and for eating purposes. I'm hoping to get it freeze dry in Ferndale and packaged also, so it's shelf stable. And then my B grade product, I would like to pulverize and supply livestock farmers because I feed it to my goats, chickens, ducks, etc. And what I pay for is coming out of East Coast Canada, that's wild harvested rockweed. So I'm basically paying a lot in distribution, and it's wild harvested, and that's not really necessarily best management practices that I found. And my grade will go to biofuel, hopefully,
Oh, wow. Very cool.
my waste. And so sugar kelp will be freeze dried, bull kelp, hopefully pickled, and then the waste and the grades will be distributed appropriately.
Great. Great. And thank you, Riley, for answering Atul's question in the chat there. Atul asked if there's a potential for aquaculture to be expanded to the point that it has a negative impact. And Riley, thanks for responding. No, the more kelp, the better, as long as it does not impinge on other uses of the waterways. Well, thank you so much, Jackie. I want to go ahead and turn the floor over to Leah at this point, so we have an opportunity to hear from her. Leah Paisano, is that how you pronounce your last name, Leah Paisano or Paisano?
Paisano.
Paisano. Leah is the founder and principal of Legoe Bay Shellfish located on Lummi Island. She has been involved in shellfish aquaculture in North Puget Sound for 15 years, specializing in the breeding and nursery production of geoduck clams. In 2022, she started a seaweed nursery program at her facility and has been providing seed stock for Lummi Island SeaGreens for 2 seasons. She will be discussing her experience in Washington's shellfish industry along with her role in the growing Washington state seaweed industry.
Thank you. Nice to see everybody here. I'm going to also attempt to share my screen here. Let's try here. Okay. Is that showing up at all?
No.
Well, I'm going to talk about here. I'll just introduce myself real quick. As Cheryl said, I've been in the world of shellfish aquaculture and aquaculture in Washington state now for quite a while, and I am a big fan of all things farming in the ocean in a responsible way. So what I'm going to be talking about here is on the scientific end, because we're talking about the origins of all these species that we are cultivating, that Riley's excited about, Jackie's excited about. They start in the plankton. They start in a microscopic form. And that's important for several reasons. One, we have to pay attention to the microscopic creatures in our waters. 2, it motivates us to pay attention to what's going in, what's coming out, and how we use our water here in Washington state, particularly in Puget Sound. I'm going to attempt to try and share my screen once again. Is that working?
Not yet, but I'll give you a moment to sort that out. And I will just mention also to folks that I will invite you to join us on June 12th. We're having another speaker series event on how climate change will affect salmon and salmon habitats. And this will feature speakers from the City of Bellingham, Lummi Nation, and the Nooksack Tribe. And they're going to share how they are adapting salmon restoration efforts in response to climate change. And you can find out how to register on our website, which is at Whatcom, W-I-N, whatcomwin.org. And Leah, your screen share is working.
Great. Okay. I'm pretty sure everyone's familiar because we're in Whatcom County of where we are, but I like to point it out every time I talk about where we are. So we're located here in Legoe Bay on Lummi Island, part of this massive waterway. I have a small shellfish hatchery. And so what that means is I'm doing all the work upland. So we're doing it on land, and I have a pole barn building that intakes water right from Legoe Bay here. And we're drawing seawater in most of the year, 24 hours a day. In this facility, we are in the business of mostly cultivating baby geoduck clams for the shellfish farming industry in South Puget Sound. So we get, it's almost more of a ranch than it is a farm, where we get adult geoduck clams, and we have a breeding program where then we breed them, we take care of them until they're about the size of a dime before they leave the hatchery. And then they go out to the farms down, like I said, in South Sound, Olympia area, where they grow to full size and to market size. And the concept behind this project that I started with seaweed cultivation is on a similar idea, where I want to be in the role of a seed producer and stick with the little babies and have a nursery, which then we can provide nursery product to farmers throughout the region or beyond if the state and the regulators will allow us to do that. The way you do this is similar to the way we do clams, where we need to get the reproductive parts of sugar kelp into our hatchery facility, where then we control fertilization and then the process thereafter. Washington State currently wants to have the genetics of cultivated kelps and seaweeds to stay somewhat local. And luckily, Legoe Bay is full of sugar kelp. So it wasn't hard for us to find reproductive source right here in the area. For example, my facility is just right over there. So we didn't have to go far, but you do have to dive for it. It likes to live at that like 40 to 60 feet deep. And that's where we will dive for ripe source tissue. And so those are examples of the blades. Some of it has some ripe tissue, some of it doesn't. That's us on an October day. Because Riley, as Riley was presenting, he put his seed lines out in December. We need to have product ready for him a couple months beforehand. It's a process. I won't get too far into the biology of things, but it's important for all of us to know. So here's sugar kelp life cycle. What I was referring to when I was referring to reproductive tissue, I'm referring to this, the sporangia. And all of this process, this fertilization process, actually happens pretty quick in the hatchery. And really, by the time it sees Riley, it's over here in this small sporophyte phase and then grows into a full sporophyte, which is what then gets harvested. So we, again, are in the process of trying to provide as many good gametes to our seed lines as possible. And it's tricky because you don't have a very long window, and they're delicate. So they require certain parameters of temperature, certain parameters of nutrients, things that nature has been doing for millions and millions of years. And we are trying to do it here in year 2 at my facility. And so it will be a learning curve. Learning even gooey duck culture, even though I had been doing that for a long time prior to starting my own, still took a long time to get to know your site. And I'm sure Riley will gain more information and Jackie will gain more information based on just spending time on your site and in your water. This is an example of how the sporulation and fertilization time works, where we take the ripe source tissue and we create conditions for it to release those spores into the water. And at that point, then here, this picture is underneath the microscope, and we can see little gametophytes forming. Now, a big bulk of the work and research being done in kelp culture right now, when it comes to the hatchery side of things, is in this process. It's teaching, it's learning what are those conditions that we can keep this fertilization process and this gametophyte culture going longer, so that we can then either provide seed lines to farmers outside of the natural reproductive window, or in addition to, and control genetics and things like this moving forward. There's a lot of research being done, mostly in Europe right now, but I'm hoping to be a part of that research here locally. This is just an example of how the spool making process works, the seed lines, how it works on our end. There's room for innovation here for the industry. We're using a pretty rudimentary setup with a drilled chalk, and we've got our pipe and we've got our line. I imagine there's going to be an inventor that has a really nice patented machine that will do this work for us, but I'll show you how it works. It's an art. And just like farming, or just like coming up with new things, you start with science, but there's also an art to things. So there's just a quick example of how we do the spools at the hatchery before we introduce the gametophytes. So here's the stage where we're getting in the hatchery. We've got our spool lines here. We keep them in aquariums in temperature controlled conditions. They need filtered air. You need to make sure that there's no contaminants on these lines. And again, there's a lot of room for learning and a lot of room for research on this realm as well. Once those gametophytes fertilize and turn into sporophytes, we've got them growing here, these little hairs along the seed lines. And we will then provide light at different levels of brightness. As the sporophytes grow, they need more light. And so we will change those conditions. There's research being done on different wave spectrums of light. And again, it's a very new industry, at least for me. And I plan to learn a lot more about all these parameters that will make very healthy seed lines. This is underneath the dissecting microscope of what those big sporophytes look like right when they're ready to go out on the farm. This is also very healthy seed lines that are very dense and ready to go out into Legoe Bay. This is a pretty high density. There's again a finesse of density, a finesse of mathematics of what you're adding to the aquaria at the time of getting your seed lines going. So I'm excited about this industry big time. I'm excited to see what Riley and Jackie is going to do. I personally think that micro and macro algae has so much potential for so many industries. And we can produce proteins, vitamins, antioxidants, this and that in such a small amount of space comparatively to land farming. So that's the promise that I see in this industry. And I really look forward to learning more and collaborating with folks, not only here on the Pacific coast, but the East Coast and also around the world, quite frankly. So I appreciate you hearing this talk, and I can take any questions if anybody has any.
Fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing, Leah.
You're welcome.
We have do we have questions for Leah? I'll give it a moment. Oh, Riley, it sounds like it looks like you're trying to speak, but you're muted.
Okay. Yeah. Just one thing, Leah. When I was up in Kodiak, and I mentioned this to you there. The hatchery up there is learning to sort of freeze in place the gametophytes, and which would have huge benefits to us. For instance, when 2 weeks after we set out, we lost half of our seed string. If we'd have had more seed string to put out, we could have doubled our harvest. So I think that's really promising, and I'm super excited about it, and wonder how you feel about it.
The same. I think there's right. I thought I was going to build in more gametophyte holding space into our first iteration of the hatchery, and then I realized it's out of my scope at the moment. But it's something that I'm very interested in and plan to collaborate more with folks who are doing that in Europe, and then also the gal that you referred to me up there in Alaska. And I know that Sarah might be doing something too here at BTC. I know that there's a gametophyte generator out there, so who knows what's going to happen.
Yes,
Yeah,
Sarah,
we actually are planning on it.
I know that you.
Yeah, do you mind if I say a few words about the program?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. And meanwhile, if
Okay.
folks have questions for Leah, go ahead and enter those in the chat.
Yeah, I don't have any slides or anything, but I just wanted to jump on here and introduce myself. My name is Sarah Smith. I'm an instructor of fisheries and aquaculture at Bellingham Technical College. And we're a technical training program. We focus on workforce training in trout and salmon aquaculture, shellfish aquaculture, and then also fishery science. Seaweed has something that's been on my radar for a few years now. And last year, we actually applied for and received grant funding to bring seaweed culturing online with our curriculum. So next year, we're rolling out new curriculum that has seaweed culturing as a part of that. We also got through that grant funding to set up space in our hatchery for producing kelp spools. So I'm going to be setting all that up next year, which I'm super excited about. Leah and Jackie, I've already connected with you guys, and I'm hoping to maybe connect with you guys more as we start doing some more seaweed stuff. Riley, we probably have crossed paths at some point. Pete Granger is on our advisory committee, so I know I've probably seen you around, but I'd love to connect with you at some point about getting students out on your farm. I'm super excited about it. We are planning on doing gametophyte culturing as well. We have all the equipment for it. I went down to the NOAA Manchester facility this last fall and trained with their biologists down there. So I haven't done it yet, but we'll see. But yeah, I'm really excited about it. So we're going to have students next year starting building a lot of stuff. Yeah, really exciting stuff. Probably a lot of learning is going to happen, but I think it'll be good.
Oh, that's all super, super exciting.
If I can put a plug in, we would really like to see you or some of your people out at the ReefNet Festival, August 17th, with an educational booth. We have that's a festival that we have every year, third Saturday in August, and it's right in Legoe Bay, right on Lummi Island, and you know it's sort of low key, but also not. You know, there's a lot of important stuff going on, and we'd love to have BTC represented there.
Yeah, we'd love to come out. Yeah, I think we've had students before in the past come out with Pete for a few times on the ReefNet. So yeah, it's a really great connection.
This is a festival, so it's about educating. We'll probably have about 800 to 1,000 people coming through this year.
Wow, wow.
That's a good number.
Reach.
Yep.
Yeah, we'd love to connect with you more there.
That's lots of kelp pickles, I think.
All right.
A couple more comments. Jackie invites Riley and Leah to join her at next year's Alaska Mariculture Conference in February. And yeah. Any last questions or comments from anyone? Just want to say thank you again to our presenters. I know you all are super busy and really appreciate you taking time to share with us. This is very, very interesting information, and it's exciting to know how things are developing. And hopefully there will be some resolution for that permitting process, which seems kind of epic.
It is epic. That's where the energy needs to be placed at BTC, along with the hands-on learning. It's the permitting processing is what stops everybody.
I would love to talk to you about that, Jackie, you as well, because all I know is that it seems really, really complicated. So if there's a way to kind of help others pave the way into this industry, I would love to collaborate on how to do that. It sounds terrible.
The more people that we have talking to DNR and other regulators, the better it'll be for everybody, because they just don't have a lot of input yet.
Yeah.
That's great closing words. And we've got some gratitude coming in on the chat. Thank you for being boots on the ground. Keep spreading the word. Wonderful info, great presentations. Thank you very much. And with that, we are just about at time. So I will go ahead and release you all to your evening.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thanks for putting this on.
Yeah, my pleasure.